It's before sunrise on a Friday morning in the little beach town of Sao Paulo, Brazil. The date is March 7th, 2025. The town is called Peruíbe, and a homeless woman named Josefa is stirring a pot with something strange in it. She's 65 years old, skinny, weathered. They call her Gringa, and in her pot is a bizarre soup. She's gonna ladle that soup out in the dark to the other people sleeping on the street beside her neighbors, her friends, people who haven't eaten. They hold out their bowls, they thank her, they eat. Nobody asks what's in it. Nobody thinks to. They should have asked because about 20 feet away, behind a little wall, there's a man on the ground. His name is Celso. His throat had been opened, his chest open, his heart missing. And so is something else, something that's very important to a man. And next to his body, there's a charcoal grill, and it's still warm. When the sun comes up, the police are going to follow a handwritten sign left beside that body. A sign with Josefa's nickname scrawled across it like a signature. And they're going to knock on her door. And when they ask her how she did it, she's going to look them directly into the eye and say, "I took him out with the power of thought." Yeah, she's crazy. Hello, strangers. Welcome back to the Strange Bar and Grill. I'm your host, JP. Pull up a stool because tonight's episode is about 5 women, 5 knives, and 5 men who ended up missing a very specific piece of themselves. One of these stories ends with a marriage proposal, one ends with a woman still sitting in a cell, and one of them we're already talking about right now. But the last story is something else, and I apologize to the men in advance because you're about to be traumatized. Peruíbe is a sleepy beach town on the south coast of Sao Paulo state. Tourists, seafood, sand. It's not the kind of place where this happens. Josefa Lima de Sousa is 65 years old, and she's been living on the streets. She drinks. She's on that stuff. And just 9 days before any of this goes down, government health inspectors pulled her out of an illegal nursing home. A filthy, unlicensed place packed with 6 people, some of them showing signs of serious mental illness. The state tried to put her in a real shelter, but she just walked right back to the sidewalk. She's literally for the streets. That's where she meets a man named Celso Marquez Ferreira. Celso is 60. He's also homeless. He's been for over 15 years. He has a daughter who still loves him, who still lets him come by the house in the mornings. She's also going to be the one who has to bury what's left of him. On the night of March 6th, Celso was hanging out with Josefa and her partner, a 41-year-old man named Robson. We don't know exactly what was said. What we know is that around 2 o'clock in the morning on March 7th, Josefa jabs Celso with a homemade knife, a crude little blade with a red handle, and she does not stop. She makes contact with his throat. She opens his chest. She takes his heart. And then she takes his manhood. And then, this is the part police confirmed from her own confession. She builds a small charcoal fire on a little grill, and she roasts his organs, and she eats them. Now here's where I have to be a little careful because the other homeless folks in that area later told the police that at dawn that morning, Josefa walked around with a pot of soup and gave them some. It's something that she never does. They ate it. They didn't know what was in it. When the cops got to the scene, the pot was empty, so they could not test what had been in it. So I just want to label this clearly here. Police have not ruled out that the soup contained parts of Celso. Witnesses described it happening, but forensically, there's no proof. It is, at this point, a theory, a really dark theory. But what's not a theory is her confession. She tells police she unalived Celso because he essayed underage people. When they asked her for names for a single victim, she can't give one. She says she just heard stories. She tells them she unalived him, quote, with the power of thought. Power of thought? Didn't you just shank this dude like a lot of times? Is that the name of that knife? Thought? Thoughts and prayers? And she tells them how they caught her, which is wild because she basically signed the crime. Next to Celso's body, she left a placard, a handwritten sign that said in Portuguese, "Estuprador pega gringa," roughly the R word for, if you said rapper, but took out a P, come get Gringa. Gringa is her nickname. So the cops just asked around and they were pointed in the right direction. She and her partner Robson are both arrested. He denies any involvement. She's charged with qualified homicide by cruel means. In Brazilian law, cannibalism itself isn't a specific crime. They had charges for desecration of a corpse. And as of the last public reporting, Josefa is in custody in Sao Paulo state, waiting for the wheels of Brazilian justice to turn. So that's our first cook. Let's go to our second. 2 months after Josefa, in a completely different part of Brazil, out in the Amazon in a state called Acre, a 37-year-old woman sits down at her dinner table with a pot of feijoada. Feijoada, if you never had it, is a Brazilian national dish. Black beans, pork, sausage, stewed for hours until it's thick and smoky and unbelievable. It's a Sunday food. It's the kind of thing that a Brazilian grandmother makes for people she loves. Now, I love me some beans and rice with some smoked ham hocks, but after researching this case, yeah, I'm gonna have to skip for a while. This is wild. This woman is making it for herself. Just herself, not for a family. And there's one extra ingredient in the pot. Her husband's manhood. The town is called Acre. The date is sometime in mid-May of 2025. Police never released the exact day. Neither she nor her husband have been publicly named. She's 37 and he was 37. So I'm just gonna call her the wife and him the husband, and we'll move on. Here's what she told police. She'd caught her husband on Instagram paying strangers for that nasty content. Them skin flicks, nudes, videos, whatever you want to call it, that P-Hub stuff, that OF stuff. And in her head, something snapped. What she did to him exactly, how she unalived him, with what weapon, the police in Acre never told the public. All we know is that he ended up gone, and his body turned up 2 blocks from their house, mutilated, and missing one very specific piece. That piece she took home and she dropped it in a pot of beans. When she finally confessed, and she confessed only after giving police 3 different contradictory stories about where she was, she used a phrase that got printed in every newspaper in Brazil. She told them she was moved by curiosity. She tasted it, 1 bite, and then she said she threw the rest away. Now, I just want to pause here because if you've seen this story online, you have probably seen it all mangled up. There's several tabloid versions out there claiming she fed this food to her children or that she fed it to homeless people. And I looked at 15 different stories, different news outlets. Every single one of them says the same thing. She tasted it, she threw it out. Nobody else ate it. The fed it to the homeless detail, that's from the previous case with Josefa. Somebody crossed the wires and the internet kind of ran with it. I think it's because they didn't release the name of the individuals, so they just attributed it to Josefa in that whole situation. So I just wanted to set the record straight because I know my people like to kind of go out there and they research these cases and do additional deep dives after they hear me tell them. So I just wanted to point that out, make that clear, just in case you go out and do your own research. There's actually 2 separate stories here. She's been charged with qualified homicide and desecration of a corpse. Put together, she's facing more than 30 years in prison. Right now, she's sitting in pretrial detention in Acre, waiting for her day in court. 1 bite, curiosity, 30 years. And that's Brazil, twice in 3 months. And I wish I could tell you, Brazil's done, but it's not. We're staying in Brazil, but we're going back to 2023. Atibaia is a pretty hill town about an hour outside of Sao Paulo. Good climate, clean air, lots of country homes. In one of those country homes, 2 people are getting ready for Christmas. Her name is Diane dos Santos Farias. She's 34. She's a cook by trade. She also does makeup and eyebrows on the side to bring in extra cash. She's got 2 kids from a previous relationship, an 8-year-old and an 18-year-old. His name is Gilberto Nogueira de Oliveira. He's 39. Everyone calls him Tony. He works as a gas station attendant. He's got a daughter of his own. They've been together about 2 years. They're engaged. They're saving up to get married. They have furnished this little country home together, piece by piece. By all accounts, they were happy. On December 12th of 2023, Diane's birthday, Gilberto does something disgusting. He fools around with his 15-year-old niece in their bed. Diane finds out about it 10 days later. She sees the messages, she sees the photos, and she does not scream, she does not cry, she does not throw him out. Instead, she goes shopping. On December 22nd of 2023, she buys a new set of lingerie. She comes home, she smiles at Gilberto. She tells him she wants to give him a night of love, and he says yes, of course. She turns off the bedroom light. In the dark, she gets on top of him, and then according to her own confession to the police, She slips a rubber band around the base of his junk like a tourniquet. And with a straight razor, the kind she uses for her eyebrow work, yeah, we're going here, she cuts it off. Like, god damn, just that sounds crazy. I don't even know, like, that hurt me just reading it. He's screaming. There's blood everywhere. She walks the severed organ to the bathroom. She takes a photograph of it. She opens WhatsApp, and she drops that photograph into his family's group chat. Then she flushes it down the toilet. She'll later tell police that she did that on purpose. She had heard that if you can get to the hospital fast enough, they can reattach it. And she didn't want that to happen. Gilberto is bleeding out. He goes for the car keys. They're gone. Diane has thrown them out the window. He wraps himself in a blanket and walks out, on foot, leaving a trail of blood behind him to the nearest emergency clinic. Diane does something else unexpected. She walks into a police station and she says, word for word, "Good evening, sir. I came to turn myself in because I just cut off my husband's penis." Gilberto survives. Reattachment is impossible. Well, yeah, it's floating around the damn sewers at this point, right? A urologist eventually offers to donate a penile prosthetic for future reconstruction surgery. And then it gets weirder because Gilberto forgives her publicly, on camera, in interviews and writing. He says, quote, "The fault was all mine. I should not have betrayed my wife with my niece. She didn't deserve this." He writes her letters in prison. He says, "I would trade places with you because I love you far beyond the tragedy that happened in our lives." She writes back, she says, "I love you, I love you, I love you." Prosecutors originally charged her with attempted murder. That would have sent her to a jury trial with a possible 30 to 50 years. But the prosecutor changed the charge. She argued Diane didn't want to unalive Gilberto. She wanted to mutilate him so he could never sleep with anyone else again. A lesser charge, bodily harm. In May of 2024, a judge sentenced her to 4 years, 8 months, and 20 days in closed prison. Gilberto started visiting her through the glass in November of 2024. He proposed marriage again. And on November 4th of 2025, after 683 days behind bars, a judge granted Diane conditional release. She walked out of prison. They are planning, at the time of this recording, to get married. So that's one happy ending, kind of. Depends on who you ask here. But the thing is, he's still a PDF. It's weird that he didn't get time for that. That's the thing that's kind of like, what? He messed around with a young girl and he's just out free? I don't know what's up with that. But finally, let's leave Brazil. Let's come back to the US in California. Garden Grove is a suburb in Orange County, about 35 miles of Los Angeles. It's quiet. It's got a big Vietnamese American community, strip malls, condos. The type of place you could hear someone saying, "I didn't think something like this would happen here," but it did. Her name is Katherine Q. Sometimes she goes by Katherine Q. Becker. She's 48 years old. She's a real estate broker. She was born in Vietnam. She grew up in a war. His name is not something I can tell you because the California courts put him under a pseudonym to protect his identity. In the reporting, he's been called John Doe. Sometimes he's called Glenn, but his true name is unknown. He was 60 years old. They had met at the gym. They had gotten married at the end of 2009. And by May of 2011, he had filed for divorce. Katherine, she didn't take it very well. She didn't want a divorce. And as the summer of 2011 dragged on, according to prosecutors, she started planning. She went to a doctor. She got a prescription for Ambien, the sleeping pill. She installed a voice-activated recorder in the bedroom. She bought nylon cords. On the night of July 11th, 2011, she made her husband dinner, tofu and soup. She crushed the Ambien into it. At around 9 p.m., he started feeling sick. He goes to lie down. He falls asleep hard. When he wakes up, each of his wrists and each of his ankles is tied to a corner of the bed. He's spread-eagled and he can't move. Oh, this is horrible. Katherine is standing over him with a 10-inch kitchen knife. The recorder she planted, it captures the whole thing. You can hear her voice, clear as a bell, shouting one phrase at him 3 times. "You deserve it, you deserve it, you deserve it." And then she saws into him. Yeah, you know what she cut off. She takes what she severed, she walks into the kitchen, she drops it into the garbage disposal, and she flips the switch. Oh, goddamn, straight ruthless records. That's crazy. And then listen to this. She calls 911. She tells the dispatcher there's a medical emergency. Her husband grabs the phone and tells the 911 operator what his wife has just done to him. When the Garden Grove police arrive, Katherine points at the bedroom and says 3 words: "He deserved it." The husband survives. Doctors at UC Irvine Medical Center try reconstructive surgery. Because of the garbage disposal, there is nothing to reattach. Can you imagine someone chopping your D off and then turning it into hamburger meat in the damn garbage disposal? That's just wild, man. Prosecutors charge her with torture, aggravated mayhem, spousal abuse, false imprisonment, and poisoning. Her public defender argues PTSD, that she had been touched as a child in Vietnam, that she had been forced upon by her own brother, that her husband had been emotionally and physically harmful during the marriage. The prosecutor, John Crystal, says the Ambien prescription, the recorder, the cords, the knife, the disposal, all of that together proves premeditation. On April 29th of 2013, a jury of 8 women and 4 men takes about 4 hours to convict her on 2 felony counts: torture and aggravated mayhem. 2 months later, Judge Richard Toohey sentences her to 7 years to life. He said, quote, "In my 24 years on the bench, I've seen a number of murder cases. Her actions were as calculated, as cold, as callous as any murder in the first degree." Katherine's appeal got rejected in 2014. She's currently housed at Central California's women's facility in Chowchilla. Her most recent parole hearing was September 3rd of 2025. She was denied. 3-year setback. She'll be eligible again in 2028 at the earliest. And her ex-husband, wherever he is, whatever name he's using now, is out there living with what she had done to him for the rest of his life. Yeah, don't let people tie you up on that bed. Like, I ain't into that. Don't let people tie you up on your bed. You never know when they're crazy, because once they tie you up, they do anything to you. I know some of you freaky people out there love that. Ooh, you can do anything to me. Nah, you ain't stab me in my...
I am still at a loss, confronted with the hatred and severity of the crime. I never saw it coming. Not in a million years. Yes, I knew there were issues between the convicted and me, issues that would never be resolved. But to end things like this, never. Up until the crime, I still liked and had respect for the convicted. I felt for her. I didn't want to force her out of the house. She was having trouble financially, and making arrangements to move out was not an easy matter. But we did need to move on. I look back on the trial and how the defense fabricated their arguments at my expense. How lies about me and my life spewed into the courtroom and seeped into the press. The convicted viciously deprived me of part of my life and identity. Then, as is routine, in cases of violence that involve something sexual, the victim must endure at the hands of defense a second attack. That hurt. I never had sex with her or anyone else in the last 7 months before the crime. There was no evidence of abuse found on the recorders that the convicted hid around the house, in her purse, and in my car. What I told was the truth. I never laid a hand on her, never hit her, never punched her, never forced her to do anything that made her uncomfortable, never called her names, nor have I done this to any other woman in my life. Of all the friends, family, and neighbors that we encountered, no one saw any bruises or cut lips or black eyes or heard name calling. If I had hurt her, why would she have wanted to stay with me? Why would she want to remain in the marriage? Why would she not confide in anyone about some type of abuse? She had lived in this country for over 30 years prior to the crime. She is as much of an American as I am. In my life, I developed a culture of optimism. In other words, no matter what happened in my life, I felt that as time went on, I would experience a better and happier life. I did not worship or want to bring back the past. I looked forward to the future. I looked forward to a better quality of life in my modest way than I had had before, or at least the opportunity to improve my life. The flame of that optimism was extinguished on July 11th, 2011. I didn't know it at first, but what the convicted did to me was douse my optimism about finding true happiness. She murdered my hope to love someone again and perhaps, just perhaps, find the partner I could share the rest of my life with. She must be so proud of herself. having destroyed a person's simple dream. I now struggle with what is before me. She has torn off my identity as a man. She has caused me to question my belief in God. She has caused my doubt in my belief in good. I have lost my sense of community. She has betrayed my trust in people. I have to learn a new way of life. My right to the pursuit of happiness has been robbed. She took that right from me that night, and now I must create a new way of fulfilling that right in my life. This was not an act of war. This was not some horrible accident. This was not the result of some terrible disease. This was a cruel and calculated violation of a person's body and mind. This was the product of vengeance, vanity, and jealousy. This despicable act not only tortured me, but tortured and caused pain for my family and friends. I am not perfect, but I'm not a bad man either. No one deserved this. I would hope that in the name of justice, the court brings punishment to the convicted in such a way that I will never by chance meet this person on the street for the rest of my life, and that this person not have an opportunity to commit acts of violence to anyone else.
And this brings us to our last case. And this is the one you're going to think about tonight when you go to bed. I'm probably going to be thinking about all this stuff, actually, but especially if you're a man. Her name is Omima Nelson, Egyptian, born in Cairo, one of 16 children. At 6 years old, under her father's orders, she was subjected to female genital mutilation. She immigrated to the United States in 1986 through a marriage to an American citizen. By 1991, she was 23 years old. She was modeling part-time at a mall in Costa Mesa, California, and she was at a bar in Huntington Beach, shooting pool when she met a 56-year-old man named William Nelson. Everybody called him Bill. Bill was a former pilot. Bill was also a former federal prisoner. He had done 4 years for trying to smuggle 100 tons of marijuana out of Mexico. He had just gotten out of prison that same year. Crazy he only got 4 years for that? What in the privilege? Omima and Bill were married within days of meeting. Within 3 or 4 weeks of that, it's Thanksgiving, November 28th of 1991. Their apartment is on Eldon Street in Costa Mesa. Now, I'm going to give you the prosecution version of what happened next because the forensic evidence supports it. Omima ties Bill to the bed. See? Don't be letting people tie you to the bed, I'm telling you. We know this because the coroner found ligature marks on Bill's wrists. She strikes him with a lamp. She pokes him with a pair of scissors. And I mean more than poking, I just can't say the other word. She hits him with a clothes iron. The pathologist counted around 25 wounds to his head alone. And then for the next 12 hours, she takes his body apart. She fries his hands in a deep fat fryer to destroy the fingerprints. She removes his head and puts it in the cooler. She fills 11 separate containers with pieces of Bill, 11, and she stashes them around the apartment, in the fridge, in the freezer, in suitcases, and plastic bags. One container had pieces of his hip mixed with cranberry sauce. The fry cooker had his hands in it along with turkey meat from Thanksgiving dinner. His genitals were removed and they were never found. A couple of days later, Omima shows up at the house of a man named Jose Esquivel, an acquaintance she used to date. She's hysterical. She's got a garbage bag with her that contains pieces of Bill. She tells Jose she'll pay him $75,000 to help her dump the remains in the Newport Beach Back Bay. Jose says sure. Jose goes to his truck. Jose calls the police. That's exactly how you do it. Some crazy person comes up to you asking if you help to get rid of a body. You say, yeah, sure, I'll be right back. Let me throw some socks on. Then you just go snitch. When the cops come through that apartment, it's one of the worst scenes veteran officers say they've ever stepped into. At trial, the court appoints a psychiatrist, Dr. David Scheffner. He's been doing this work for 20 years. He tells the jury he has never in his career seen a case this bizarre, this psychotic. Omima tells Dr. Scheffner that before she ate parts of Bill, she put on a red dress, red shoes, a red hat. She tells him she cooked his ribs in barbecue sauce. And she tells him this: I did his ribs just like in a restaurant. It's so sweet, it's so delicious. I like mine tender. She later took it back, said she never ate him, said she was not a monster. The prosecutor, Randy Pulowski, put her on the stand. He looked at her and he said, we're missing about 130 pounds of Bill. You know where he might have gone? And Omima looked back at him and she said, "No, he was all there." The jury convicted her of second-degree murder on January 12th of 1993, 27 years to life. She was denied parole in 2011 with a 15-year setback, the longest the board could give her. That setback runs out this year. In 2026, she is 58 years old. She's still living in a cell at the California Institution for Women in Chino. Now, going through this, I talked about the prosecutor's version of this case, but I never told Omima's version of the case and why she said she did it. So Omima claimed that on November 28th, 1991, her and Bill had been fooling around that night. They were into bondage play. Apparently Omima was tied up on the bed and Bill had SA'd her against her will. She broke free, and then that's when she attacked Bill, hit him upside the head with a lamp, and proceeded to use scissors on him. But that doesn't make sense to me because Bill was tied up and had ligature marks on his wrists and ankles. But apparently he's been SAing her throughout this relationship, and that's what caused her to snap, according to her. That part's unsure. Also, with his manhood not being found, they believe it was actually put down the garbage disposal as well. So yeah, this is a sick case all the way around. Just horrible. But alright guys, that's going to be it for today. Let me know what you guys think of this one in the comment section. But with that, let's jump into some member shoutouts. Shout out to Shay M5645, DK the God, Franklin Joan, Laura Notek, Miss VWAG 2020, Michelle Ramsey 752, Lessa Combs 3832, 901 Retired Ghost Hunter, Revealing Truth Now, GJ Slaughter, and By Capricorn.